Well, welcome. My name is Barb Nelson. I'm the 9th grade counselor. For those of you who may have been here, sitting in this spot last year as 8th graders, you kind of end up getting a double dose of me. I end up handling the 8th to 9th grade registration as well as the 9th to 10th grade, so sorry for that. Next year, someone else takes over as 10th grade counselor and typically stays with the students in grades 10, 11, 12. So here's my contact information. If you do want to jot it down, you can also find that on the senior high website, my phone number and email. I shared this with the students as well when I met with them last week on Thursday or Friday, because with Heidi's giving me the ear sign. Can you hear back there? I'm going to try to yell here. I shared it with them because a lot of times students just have quick questions and they can email me, and that's an easy way for me to respond. I already had, for example, today, a group of 4 young ladies that came in together because they kind of had similar questions about registration, so they were able to come in together. We kind of talked through things and answered their questions, and then away they went. So we have time during this week and then next week as well, which I'll touch on, to help answer questions, because we know this process can be a little overwhelming, especially if it's your first time through. So that's what we're here for, to answer questions, and this will be on tape as well on Park TV and on our website, so if you need to go back and review anything. So we'll do our best to go through it and answer any questions, and kind of have a question and answer session at the end for you as well. If you don't have sheets, there are 2 different sheets, green sheets that you need. One is has the class of 2017 graduation requirements. The other is the official registration sheet, and then there's a third buff-colored sheet that I've used with students just as a 4-year planning sheet. So counselors are helping kind of distribute those for people just coming in. Maybe just raise your hand and you can let them know if you need a copy of that. Right now, we're just selecting classes for 10th grade. When they register for high school, we just selected 9th grade courses. So all we're doing is a year at a time. But for some students, looking ahead to grades 11 and 12, it's helpful to kind of understand kind of different pathways and things. So that's what I tried to explain when I met with the students, because sometimes choices they make in 10th grade may impact what they will want to take, or kind of set them up to be in the right kind of classes to take what they want to in 11th and 12th. So we'll kind of cover that as well as we go through the PowerPoint this evening. So yes, last week I met with the students either Thursday or Friday in their classes, in their block classes. Tonight we're meeting with parents, and then next week, the 17th through the 21st, what we plan to do is turn on Power School so families can have access to it from home. We're trying this new this year. Last year when the students were in 8th grade, if you were at our middle school, we came in as counselors and met with them in the computer lab and actually had them register right there. So students got a little taste of that. The Power School system is really easy to be able to log in and find, and I'll show you how to do that as well a little bit later. So our expectation and hope is that they get questions answered and are able to go in next Monday through Friday at any time and put in their registration. What we have done is Wednesday and Friday, counselors will be in the computer labs all day in C153. So if students have a quick question or don't have internet access at home or something's wrong with the computer, they can stop in and be able to input their registration right there. If students have the green sheet done, the planning sheet, it literally should take less than 5 minutes to be able to enter that into Power School. And once they submit it, it's in, and their registration is there. Their course requests are in for next year. So again, Wednesday and Friday, C153, that's periods 1 through 7, so they either can stop down and we'll have some passes there to send them back to class. If they have a study hall time, we're going to communicate with teachers and let them know they just need to give them a pass to be able to come down and meet with us and then head back up to study hall. This general information, there's a lot of different things listed here. The one thing I touch on with students when I talk to them is the piece about schedule changes. It's really hard. We have a building of just over 1,400 students, and we are trying to offer a lot of different courses for them, and also putting some new things in next year for the course guide for juniors and seniors. And so when you're trying to offer a lot of different things to students, it's really tough on the schedule. And so we really encourage you as parents and with your students to kind of go through and really make some good choices, because as I told the students, if they choose pottery and cinema, and then next fall they come and say, I guess I don't really want to take that. I want to take theater arts and drawing. There may not be room in those classes because we're going to staff the building for what the students select and what they register for, which does get tricky because we know that there are certain courses that students want to take. And so we really just want to emphasize with them that it's really hard to make schedule changes. Some of the students that came in, even second semester for changes found that, we do not make schedule changes for teacher or time of day preference, and those are things that students sometimes have a rude awakening when they've had the same teachers in 9th grade, and by chance they maybe got the same teacher for first and second semester math, and because of the block system we have, they have the same teachers in civics, science, and English. And in 10th, 11th, and 12th grade, that may or may not happen just by luck of the schedule. So they may have different English teachers, for example, first and second semester. So that's something they just should be aware of and not be surprised by. One other thing I'll just note on here, because I see it, if your student has an individual education plan, they qualify for special education services. Another person that may be helpful in determining courses is a case manager. Typically they work with us and we will review student registrations after those are all in at the end of this month. We have kind of a March 1st deadline we go by to try to have everything entered into PowerSchool, because even though it seems early to be making these decisions, there's really a lot that needs to happen between now and the end of the school year with regard to staffing decisions that are made and course decisions for next year. So it all needs to start happening now, so as we move forward, we can be ready for that in the coming months. I know this is difficult to see, and that's why you have the green sheet in front of you. The one that says Class of 2017, I'm just going to grab one of each of these. For many of you, if you were here last year or you had an enrollment session with me sometime last spring or even in August, this is just kind of a review for you in terms of the graduation requirements, so I don't want to spend a whole lot of time on it. The one thing that you do need to be aware of is at the top. Minnesota right now is kind of changing what they're doing with the testing. Our students, the 9th graders this year, will still take that MCA, the Minnesota Comprehensive Assessment Writing Test, in April. But how that's going to count for them towards graduation may change, because what they're looking at doing is developing an accountability test similar to the ones they've done before, but it's in development. And my guess is they're talking about that it's going to be offered in grades 8, 10, and 11. My guess is it will not be ready by the time your students are 10th graders, but possibly by the time they're 11th graders. And that will be a test that they would have to take and meet a certain threshold, I'm guessing, for graduation, or go back and retake it, or have some other things that they would do in place of that test. And so it's really hard, and we feel kind of silly standing up here saying we don't know, but we're getting that same message from the state. We're not sure what they're going to do, and this is what they're telling us right now. I think they've actually contracted with the ACT company, the testing company, to create this test. So one of the things we're not sure of as well is if it will count as an actual college admission test, or it would be something similar and students would still be required to take the ACT. So as we know more information about that, it will be passed along to you. But for now, just know that students will still be taking the writing test in April of this year. The credit amount has remained the same, so 46 semester credits to graduate. You earn 1 credit per class per semester. If you get a D- or above. And I kind of gave the lecture to students saying that now is the time, if they had some difficulty first semester, maybe didn't pass a class, that they really need to kind of kick it in for second semester, because you can kind of screw up one semester as a student, but any more than that, it gets really difficult to graduate on time with your class in June of 2017. If your student is one that's sitting out there that maybe has failed 1 or 2 courses, typically in early May, we will be sending out letters for summer school based on how they did first semester and their 3rd quarter grades. And so once we have the summer school information, we would send that out to families, because we do offer a summer school program and have for the last few years. There's students can only earn 2 credits in the summer school program here. And it's not about getting ahead in a class or content area. It's basically just a credit recovery program. So if you failed a class, you can make it up by doing the summer school sessions. I'm hearing a microphone, so hopefully my voice will be saved here momentarily. So yes, 46 semester credits is that magic number. If students ended up earning 12 credits each year, thank you. after talking all day last Thursday, Friday to the students, I was like, oh my gosh, I can't believe teachers do this. And obviously they get used to it, but it's hard to project that much. For the blocks, I did them all at once, so I had 90 some kids in there, and it was like, okay, get me through an hour. Okay, so semester credits. So with 12 credits each year, students could still have study halls, ample time to have study halls, and still meet their graduation requirement. So, if they had 12 each year, it'd be 48, which is 2 more than they actually need to graduate. So they can be on track. I know a lot of students have been worried, like, I have a study hall, is that okay? Or I have 2 study halls. And in many cases, freshmen, there are probably about 80% that ended up with at least 1 study halls. There are some students who elected or ended up having 2 study halls, and that certainly is fine as long as they're passing the rest of their courses. Now we're going to have this where we have to dance around. Then with the 46 credits, they're broken down into these content areas listed on the sheet. 8 credits of each English and social studies. There are kind of pathways in each of those classes, and we'll get to that a little bit, and I'll show you a place on the website where you can find a little bit more information about pathways. In social studies, for example, a full year of civics, world history, U.S. history, and then geography and economics are the state standard requirements. There are some discussions about that because it typically has been, if you've taken courses that are above or beyond that in terms of AP or IB courses, you have met the requirement, and now we're in discussion about that with our curriculum leader here at the district office to determine if things like AP Psychology, if they're going to embed those standards in other places, so we know that our graduates have met all the standards in those areas. I feel like this is really loud. Is it too loud back there? Maybe if I talk down here. Okay. With math and science, 6 credits are required in each of those, so 3 full years. The majority of our students will earn 4 credits. How far? La la. Sorry. Maybe if I just stand right here, I'm not going to move. With math and science, so 6 credits, that's 3 full years of each of those. If students end up taking that additional 4th year, those credits just count towards their 46, and for the most part, students do take 4 years of math and science, and in fact, I tried to tell students that things with regard to college admission are getting more and more competitive, and that places like the U of M have told us that, the class of 2016 and beyond needs 4 years of high school mathematics. So being able to, have 4 years on your transcript is what students will need to do. And there's lots of different offerings, but for some students that have started at, for example, honors geometry or honors advanced algebra, they're going to be at some very high level math by the time they get through those 4 years. So it's just that awareness of that. On the back side of your class of 2017 graduation requirements, there is a math flowchart, which we'll get to in just a little bit to kind of talk about the math offerings as well. Health has been embedded. You probably saw this last year. Students are being pulled out of their English, civics, and science class for a week. It's basically a Monday through Thursday, 3 different times during the year to meet the health curriculum. And we are now offering driver's ed as an after-school course. So if people are interested, I know there are sheets kind of hanging up on the wall. You can pick one up tonight or have your students pick one up. They're in the B1 hallway by the main gym there. Physical education, students have 1 semester credit of that. They either had 1st or 2nd semester. Fine arts, there's 2 credits of fine arts that are required. If your students are taking band, orchestra, or choir, they would have met that requirement. Anything they do additionally just spills over into their elective credits. If they haven't had like an introduction to art or performing arts, you can see that on the registration sheet. There's a lot more offerings for them as 10th graders. So a lot more things open up, especially in the way of art, the classes that they can take that they might be interested in. I'm going to skip over and come back to the college and career readiness in just a second. 9th graders have most of them have had the information communication literacy class. I know there were a lot of questions by freshmen as well because some students, because of scheduling issues, could not get into that course because maybe their language or music was scheduled at the same time, so we had to make some decisions about that. They will not have to go back and take that. It's just that over the course of the next 3.5 years, just making sure they have taken a credit. to meet the 46 that they'll need. So they just might not have that as an assigned elective. And then world language is not something that's required, again, for graduation at the state or district level. It's just, again, keeping that option open for a four-year college or university. Typically, they're going to say a minimum of 2 years of a single second language, if not having 3 or more years of a single second language. And for students who have been in Spanish immersion in Spanish 7 this year, they can continue on into Spanish 8. They actually would take an AP Spanish language test as a 10th grader and then go on from there if they choose to with some IB options for Spanish. And then the balance of credits is just made up of electives, so students' choice there. This section here, the assigned electives, we touched on it a little bit with regard last year. I may have shown the slides. And really what that is a few years ago, we were the recipients of an I3 grant, Investing in Innovation. And so the school took a look at some different things they could do. And part of the outgrowth of that was looking at offering academy courses. And so what we were wanting to do was create and maintain a post-secondary going culture. So part of that advisory curriculum that your students have, about once a month they meet with one of their block teachers. That should continue into 10, 11, 12, and there's kind of college and career readiness information that is available to them that we're making sure we're giving all students kind of a baseline of information. We wanted to kind of build on our successes and then put common teachers with common students, similar to what we've done in 9th grade, but building that into 10th, 11th, and 12th. The actual academy structure is that in 10th grade, and you'll see it on the bottom of the actual registration sheet. There are 4 what we're calling Academy Foundation courses, and I know they're difficult to see here, but the titles are there. Foundations of Law, Foundations of Media Arts, Business Innovation, and Healthcare Core. And you can tell by the subject areas, or the titles, kind of what the subject area is. It's meant to be an overview of that kind of career pathway area. And they really didn't just pick those out of the air. They did some research, talked to local colleges and universities, businesses. They looked at economic indicators to kind of select these courses and look at those kind of academy areas. So students go from choosing 2 of those 4 in 10th grade, and there is an option if students are taking 3 or more honors, AP, or IB courses that they would opt out of those if they choose to, because we know sometimes that's a heavy load for students to take. And then from 10th grade, they can go into, and again, I know this is hard to see, but what I want you to take away from it is that there's programs of study that are part of this academy structure. And so when you look at, for example, up above, the 5 categories are business, engineering and technologies, health sciences, law and public policy, and then media, arts, and communication. So there's kind of those 5 pathways. You can start in something as a 10th grader, taking one of the courses we just mentioned, and then go into taking in 11th and 12th grade. There are requirements for students to take 2 of the 9 offerings right now. There potentially may be a 10th offering if that gets established by the time your students would be going into their junior year. So there's options there to build on, and again, it's all about career growth. So if you knew that your student was interested in health sciences, there's a healthcare core, then they would go into a health professions terminology, and we're looking at offering next year for the first time a sports exercise and health science course, which is actually an IB course. So kind of a specific pathway for students in that content area. So lots of different choices there for students to kind of take a look at it. And we'll get to, at the end, I'll show you online where you can find descriptions of all these new courses, because it's nice to kind of take a look at what the full description is of each of those courses. So that kind of rounds out the graduation requirements, so 46 credits. I'm going to jump back up here. The registration sheets. So the sheets you have in front of you, again, I left on here the place for the parent-guardian signature because we hopefully want to make this a joint effort between the student and the parent or guardian, because we know that hopefully better decisions are going to be made. But we are not going to have students turn these into us because of how we're trying to structure it this year with students making decisions at home online. So that part got left on there, but again, this sheet is just for them a guide to go through to be able to, if they sit down and do this, they should be, like I said, ready to put in their registration, their course request directly into PowerSchool. When you're looking at the official registration sheet, it corresponds to the content areas. So when you look at language arts, for example, most students are going to be selecting English 10 or Honors English 10. Also listed on there is our ESL classes, as well as a place for if there is a special ed placement with language arts. Again, most students, it's English or Honors English 10. What I will say about this year, especially for students who are kind of on the edge with regard to selecting honors going into 9th grade. In 10th grade, things open up. So students don't have to take kind of that all or nothing approach. If they're very strong in English, they can select just English to take honors. If they just want to try an advanced placement social studies class, they can do that. So it's kind of nice for them to be able to pick and choose and not feel like they have to take the full load of classes. I know last night Greg Goddard did a presentation about the IB program and looking at kind of pathways to the IB diploma. And I'll just take a second here to kind of interject a piece about balance, because I think it's really tricky for those students who went through honors this year. They may have found themselves overwhelmed at times, or maybe not happy with the grades they were receiving. So being able to kind of have a better balance with what they're going to be taking next year, and know that there is that choice, and that kids need to kind of look at themselves individually and not what all their friends are taking, because it is hard. It's competitive by nature, just being in high school. You have all your friends and what courses they're taking, but kids really need to look at what's going to be the best choice for me. Maybe taking 2 honors, or an advanced placement and an honors English, whatever it is, and having that balance a little bit going forward. And if there's other activities and things that they're interested in outside of school, having time for those. There are some students that thrive on that and are going to take the full load of classes if that's what works for them. But again, your son or daughter, and being able to kind of look at what level of challenge they need, and where they can be successful, because it's kind of that tipping point of, at what point do you say, your grades are suffering too much, we need to look at kind of pulling back with courses and kind of having that good balance there. With social studies, the progression typically in 10th grade is world history. Some students may elect to take an AP World History, or the other option typically is AP European History, and I caution the students to make the choice based on the class and the curriculum, and not necessarily the teacher, because from year to year the teacher could potentially change. We never know with staffing how things are going to end up, so making a good choice around what they would be learning about, not necessarily the teacher or the teacher's style. So that's for social studies. Again, the ESL is there, as well as a line for if there's any special ed needs. Science, this is where, again, there's kind of some pathways. Typically, students from Science 9 would go into biology, then they have a year of chemistry and a year of physics. There are some changes that the state is looking at and we're looking at in terms of curriculum, but for now what we know is typical students would go into biology next year. For some students who are interested in pursuing possibly a higher level of biology at some point, they may be interested in taking chemistry as a sophomore. They have the regular chemistry, or there's an IB chemistry standard level course. When we talk about IB standard level courses, the science, the IB chemistry happens to be a 3-semester course, which I know when students start to think about that throws them off, because that goes into first semester of their junior year. Then they would be taking that along with potentially IB biology. So some students will make the choice just to take it 2 semesters. But in terms of the IB curriculum and how that works, AP classes, advanced placement, if you're not aware, are 1 year that you take a test at the end of 1 year in May. IB courses are typically, they're either 1 year, the standard level courses, 3 semesters, or the higher level courses are 2-year courses actually that you test at the end of 2 years, and depending on how you do on these tests, you may or may not earn some college credit, and that's depending on where you go. So, the nice part is that option is there. It's a more rigorous course for students, but again, it comes with choices. If I'm going to take the whole 3 semesters of chemistry, that means I may be doubling up in science the first semester of my junior year, which can be kind of tricky for some students kind of planning that. But that's why it's nice to kind of know that going into it, so you can look ahead, and we'll get to this buff sheet in just a little bit here and this is a way to kind of for students to be penciling that in. So life science is it's typically a little easier than biology, not as many labs and a lower reading level. So if there are students who are struggling in Science 9, life science might be the way to go. And what I encourage students to do, and you can be doing this as well, if you do have questions about the appropriate level for your student, being able to touch base with their current teachers and get recommendations about, you know, where they are, if they need to talk to someone in their department, or maybe refer you to talk to someone else who has taught something in the department, that would be helpful to make, you know, good educated decisions for your students. So, and the piece too about chemistry with 10th graders is, the piece I caution the students on is if you take chemistry as a 10th grader, but then you decide, you know what, I guess I'm not going to take a higher level biology course. Traditionally, it's mostly 10th graders in biology and mostly 11th graders in chemistry. So if you're then a junior that's going to take biology, you're going to be a junior in mostly with sophomores in that biology course. So sometimes, again, just knowing that and being able to think through that. For some students, that wouldn't be an issue at all, and it is becoming more blended in terms of the sciences because kids are making different choices, but being able to kind of know that ahead of time and be aware of the pathway for students. Okay, and then math, we have lots of different boxes there, and you'll notice I haven't really said, but S1, S2, semester 1, semester 2, anything that has 2 boxes by it is a full year course. With math, again on that back side, and I'll flash to it here, is the math flow chart that they have developed just in terms of being able to show you the different options based on where your student is as a 9th grader and then going through the rest of their coursework. So again, talking to current teachers, kind of knowing your student style. What they did for both the honors geometry and honors advanced algebra is they went ahead and put in kind of a recommended RIT score, that NWA test, the MAP test scores that you may be used to seeing if your student has kind of grown up in St. Louis Park. They've done those MAP tests, and we continue to do them in the fall of 9th grade, and they will have them in the spring again. So they gave a recommended score for each of those that is in the program of studies, the course descriptions that you can take a look at. And that's based on how students have done in the course, and they're kind of looking at kind of the statistics over the last few years, because it's just a recommendation. Students can still take those courses, but what they were looking at is students who have shown success going through those levels of that coursework in the honors geometry and honors advanced algebra. And with each of those, there is a contract that goes along with them, just kind of talking about the pace at which that course goes, the high level of expectation with regard to homework and tests as well. So that's something that the math teachers would go through with the students once they start in that course. And then the last little box on the front side, and we're looking at having a total of 10 boxes checked, so basically 2 for each of the first 4, and then 2 individual classes. And I know your students may have gotten a sheet, because I feel bad I changed it after the fact, but when we used to collect these, we had, I had already printed them for the students, it kind of said 1, 2, 3, 4 for each of those. So we had them rank order their choices, because when we would collect the sheets, then I would have something to go back to if they had like a 3rd or 4th choice, if they didn't get their first choice for that Academy Foundation course. What I'm having them do, and you can show them these sheets, just think of it as 4 boxes here, that they're taking 2 of the 4 of those Academy Foundation courses just as an exploratory for those academies that we have developed. The little fine print there again is if you're registering for any 3 honors, AP, or IB courses, you may opt out of the Academy Foundation courses to select an alternate elective offering or a study hall. So again, and this is where it got tricky with the students trying to explain this, that if they are taking 3 of those courses, it can be any honors, AP, or IB courses. If they're taking 3 of those courses, they can opt out of this because we know they might want to have a study hall built into their schedule. We also know that those students might want to take one of those courses, so they could take it as an elective option on the back. They can write that in. They can use it as an option, an alternate elective. So I told students too, you know, if you chose something up above, but you'd be okay taking the business innovations class, put that as an alternate. So they have an option to opt out, but they're typically students would pick 2 of the 4 as their part of their kind of assigned coursework. And there were questions, I think some students, well, gosh, this takes up some of my electives, but this is relatively new for us, and if you have had older students who have gone through the high school, they used to have an extra semester of health and Phy-Ed in 10th grade, and so they wouldn't have had choice either during the 10th grade year. They would have had to take a semester of each of those, and then if they were, for example, on the backside taking a full year of world language and a music, that would have been all their course offerings. So we're just kind of replacing what they had taken before. Now they only need 1 credit of Phy-Ed, and we're doing that embedded health to make room for the Academy Foundation courses that have been put in place of that. So typically on the front side, 10 boxes that are checked, and then on the back side, a couple clarifications that students do not need to have something selected out of every box. These are just kind of the different departments that the classes are available from, and you can see the variety of courses there, and some of them again having semester 1, semester 2 offerings, the AP Environmental Science if they didn't take it as a 9th grader in honors, or the IB film or IB theater options, or the music again are all full year. So students can go through and typically they're selecting 4 more courses. So if they are someone who's taking a year of world language and continuing in music, that would be all their options, okay? And what I said with I'll just touch base about this alternate course selection. So typically, these will serve as an alternate choice in the event that something you select cannot be scheduled, and that's usually semester-long electives. So generally, you're not going to need to select alternates if you're doing a full year of music and world language, because typically Power School is able to figure that out in the schedule. It's when students are going to take maybe they're going into Spanish 3, and then they're going to take pottery and theater arts. That's where we'd like to have them at least have 2 alternates that they're going to actually put into Power School, because then if something gets canceled or there's a conflict in their schedule, we can go right back to their Power School course selection and be able to take a look and fit something else in instead of kind of trying to track them down, or worse, us picking something for them. So it's to their benefit, and I tried to explain this to him, to put alternates whenever they have 1 semester classes that they are selecting. So they can do that and indicate it, and there's actually a place right online that they can input that elective alternate choice. On the top, I don't know if it actually says on there, but yeah, in this box where there's study hall, students can choose to take 12, 13, or 14 course offerings. So that's what they would be registering for. If they know they want to have at least 1 semester of a study hall, they don't need to enter it in anywhere. They just are putting 13 course offerings, and so it says regular study halls will be placed automatically. You do not need to enter them in Power School. If they are a student that has an IEP again, and they have had, for example, a strategies course, we do want that included, and it's listed there as semester 1 and semester 2. It's the special ed study hall, so they can input that on their registration. So a total of 14 boxes checked on here with alternates is what we're hoping that they have, and then once they do that, they're able to go directly into Power School. And on the 17th, they'll magically just turn on. There's going to be, when students log in, typically they see their grades and attendance kind of on that main screen. On the left-hand side, there's going to be a little button that says class registration. When they click that, a screen that looks like this will show up, and I went through, and in most cases I was able to show the students kind of live how this looked. I've just taken the screenshots for you. So it basically, these line up with the content areas that you have on the green planning sheet. They click on the pencil over here, and once they do that, each of the subject areas will open up with the boxes for the different choices in that area. You can hear the feedback here. English 10, for example, is on here. There's all the ESL classes, Honors English, and in many cases, they just need to be aware that there's always going to be potentially multiple sheets that they need to select from, so they may need to toggle on the bottom to that next sheet. For example, when they get to the elective selection area, there's 9 different screens that they can click through, because these are all just put in alphabetically in that elective area. So full year, they're taking both semester 1 and semester 2, if you can kind of be checking with them when they're putting that in. So again, the screens, and then once they get done with this screen, at the very bottom of it, and you'll see it goes to electives, and then following that is, I couldn't get the whole screenshot, but there's alternate electives, and then there's a counselor only section that if we work with them, we would be able to put things in. Once they click all their choices in, there's boxes that populate in each of those lines, and when it's live, there's a submit button at the very bottom. Once they submit it, the list of courses is just going to show up. And it'll show all their courses, so you can eyeball it there and double check. And that'll be open all week, the week of the 17th through the 21st. One thing that we did do this year, which is kind of neat, and advisory corresponded to it, we were able to have every department shoot a short video, which our friend from Park TV helped us with, that the students will see in advisory. The timing's a little tricky because we couldn't change the advisory date, but so students on Wednesday in their advisory will see about a 40-minute video, 35 to 40-minute video of all the different elective offerings. So each department leader they had someone from their department talk about the courses, and students will watch that, and if that changes anything for them in terms of their elective choices, they can just jump right back into PowerSchool and make that change. So that's something just to make you aware of and let students know that is coming as well, that they'll be able to see that short video, and we'll post that online as well for families to take a look at if you're interested in just kind of knowing what some of those different elective offerings may be. So they're just selecting English, Social, Science, Math, the Academy Foundation courses, or that area can be left blank, the electives and the alternate electives. And one of the things that I talk to students about is, we talked about how they just finished their first semester of their 9th grade year. When they log into PowerSchool now, it's going to show them their GPA and their class rank. So the reality is kind of right there in front of them based on how they did. Ultimately, it's students' responsibility to track credits. But the counselors do that along with them. Whoever ends up being, the senior counselor is checking graduation requirements as we go through. But as students go into the upper grade levels when they do registration, I know, Heidi, who has 10th graders right now, she handed out transcripts to all the students. So they're getting kind of feedback on, this is where you're at, this is where you're at with the certain requirements, and you can check the boxes. So I kind of showed them, this is a form that's online, you can start to do it now. Most of you have 6 or 7 credits. It becomes a little more engaging when they have more semesters that they've been here, but this is something, just know that's available online, that they can be kind of tracking their credits as they go through high school and making sure they're getting them in the right places. And then the last sheet here, which is the buff sheet that I gave out, I tried in all the classes to really hit on the idea of that 4-year plan, and I've already met with a couple students individually who wanted to do that. Obviously, there's 390 of you, or of your students, so it would be very hard to meet individually, but if you do have questions on this, I'm definitely available to answer them, or would love to sit down with you and kind of do some planning if that's something you're interested in. What I tried to do on the back side is go through, and this isn't all inclusive, of course, of all the different pathways that are there, but at least you can see in some of the different content areas what direction students could go, if they're interested in advanced placement or if they're interested in IB. And I know some of you maybe last fall when there was conferences, Greg Goddard did a presentation then, and that's something you can, if your students kind of thinking about more IB courses or looking at the IB diploma, for example, I'm guessing next fall he would have those same conversations and presentations, because that's the time when you're kind of going to be starting to think about it a little more and then making decisions going into 11th grade for course selection. So we will have more of those types of meetings as well for families that might be interested, but I know a lot of the teachers in their classes will talk about this with the students in terms of kind of levels of courses and what to expect in the coming years. So being able to kind of go from what you're doing now in 9th grade and then making some decisions for grades 10, 11, 12. The last thing I wanted to mention, and I know in the letter that went out in the information, we had said we would have kind of short presentations, and I may have enough time to get through the few things that I just want to mention for parents of 9th graders to be thinking about. One of them for sure that I just wanted everyone to be aware of, because we're responsible for making sure that this is an option now. post-secondary enrollment options. So this is something that legislation just passed in 2012 to enable 10th graders to take advantage of. This is a screenshot directly off Minnesota Department of Education's website. If you go there and just put in the little search box PSEO, you would come to this, and it goes through and explains what that program is all about. If you aren't aware of it, typically it's been that juniors and seniors can take classes at a local college or university. Those classes count for high school graduation requirement as well as for college courses. It's opened up now to 10th grade, but what 10th graders can do is take some technical courses, and so it's a little different in terms of what the 10th graders can take, but then in 11th and 12th grade it opens up, and it's really based on a number of different requirements that the kids have to meet, GPA requirements and possibly some testing requirements for admission. And what we are going to do, this is the wordy screen, I copied a few things. If students are interested, we will have some informational meetings for them March 4th and March 11th. Anytime periods 1 through 4 or periods 6 and 7, they can drop in into the Learning Lab in the Career Center. So again, if they have a study hall or have a pass from a teacher that's easy for them to come out of, even as 10th graders, to think about if they are considering it for 11th grade, this would be good to sit in on just to kind of hear the options about it and know a little bit more what is available to them, because some students, we have students that do it part-time, we have students that do it full-time, so there are a number of different options, and again, it is available to 10th graders. It's just one of those things where it's limited in terms of the offerings, and with post-secondary education options or enrollment options, you need to be providing your own transportation, so that's one of the tricky things that typically 10th graders have a more difficult time with, to be able to kind of work that into their schedule, and or parents trusting them to be able to drive if they even have their licenses yet. So that's one option for 10th graders, but more so kind of, we would, I think, kind of support more 11th and 12th graders doing the PSEO options. There are a couple other tabs on the website that have additional information. On post-high school planning, there's a link to the International Baccalaureate website if that's something you're interested in, and other recommended college prep courses, a study kind of looking at those pathways. And I'm just gonna, I hate to do this, but we planned for an hour, so we're gonna, since you're here, I'm just gonna jump into this because it's kind of what we had said we would continue and have a little bit of an extra presentation on. And I think it is helpful just to know what's out there and what's coming up. So what to be thinking about while still in high school. So information for parents of 9th graders, and I'll fly through this so we'll still have time for questions. What does my student take and when? Again, for some of you, if this is your first student coming through the high school, you may be thinking, what is this, kind of alphabet soup, all these tests, the PLAN, the PSAT, the ACT, the SAT. Those are all kind of standardized test scores that are taken at different times. A couple things just to kind of point out on the side here. Before we get into that, there's 2 different programs. One I introduced students to in the fall, and you would have gotten an email about, is called Naviance, and there are some practice tests available on there, as well as the Minnesota Career Information System. There's free practice tests for all of those different tests that students can take. This is the login, what Naviance looks like. It's the same login and password that the students use for PowerSchool. Once they get into that, they have all these different tabs available to them. Courses, colleges, careers, about me, and my planner. I had a little note after I met with them, and I encouraged many of the students or all the students to go back and do a cluster finder. There's a really great short activity that ends them with the clusters, the career clusters that they might be interested in, a great interest inventory, a beginning level one for them to try. So ask your students about that, and if they haven't gone back in since October when I met with them, encourage them to kind of check that out. With each of these different tests, I just have a screen on each. So the PLAN. The PLAN test is a practice ACT test. It's typically, what we do is offer it to students in the fall of 10th grade. It's normed against 10th graders, so it's a great test for them to take in kind of a practice setting. It's scored on a 1 to 32 basis, and it tests in English, math, reading, and science. The really nice part about it is it gives an estimated, that should be estimated ACT composite score range. So it kind of tells them, based on how you've done on this is how we would project out that you would do in your junior year taking the actual ACT test. And then it also offers a career and interest inventory. The nice part is when students get their results back, they actually get the actual test book, and then it tells them, which answer, you got correct or incorrect, and then what kind of content area it was, especially in math, if it's a more algebra related or geometry related question. So they can use that data, if they choose to be able to go back and kind of look at where they had some errors and maybe do some, work on what they would need to do to improve their ACT score. So that's fall of 10th grade. Because of a grant through the state of Minnesota, we've been able to offer that at no charge to 10th graders over the last few years. I haven't heard anything yet that that's changing, so hopefully we'll be able to offer it again to next year's group when they're in the fall of 10th grade. The PSAT, there's always a lot of buzz about the PSAT test. It's taken in October of 10th and 11th grade. Typically though, it's more important in that junior year because that's when it counts for National Merit Scholarship Competition. So you hear a lot about that, but the National Merit Scholarship Competition is for the top 1% of students that take that test across the nation. So obviously very competitive. We've had National Merit winners over the last, however many years, and it's great, but it is a very competitive test, and I think sometimes if 10th graders take it, it can be kind of discouraging to them. We typically would recommend if you're in kind of the top third of your class to maybe take it as a 10th grader as a practice test for when you're going to take it in your junior year. But otherwise, taking the plan and the PSAT back-to-back can sometimes be difficult for students because it can be kind of overwhelming to have to take two of those courses. This is something that tests in critical reading, math, and writing skills, and there typically is a charge for this because not every student takes it, and it's usually, there's 2 dates. It's usually right around that Education Minnesota break, right around conferences, that it's a Tuesday and a Saturday, and we always offer it here on that Tuesday. The ACT, and I laugh because I say on here spring of 11th grade. Typically it used to be an April or June test. Now kids are backing up into February to take this test as juniors, which, the ACT is supposed to be testing you on what you've learned, and the more math you can obviously finish in your junior year, the better you would probably do on this test. So it used to be that it was always, you took it in June, and if you needed to retake it, you'd take it in the fall of your, senior year. But more so now kids are taking that April test and maybe retaking it in June, or we're finding more students, taking it in February and then retaking in the April or June. So college admission tests that students need to take. There's kind of this misnomer that, you take the ACT if you're going to the Midwest schools and a SAT if you're going to the East or West Coast. There's only, I think at last count, like 13 schools that don't accept an ACT score, but it is something that it's kind of like comparing apples to apples. If you're going to apply to somewhere out on the East Coast or West Coast, having that SAT might be a better comparison for those schools for you. But generally speaking, our students do better on an ACT test. You register directly online for it. The website is there. Kids can find full-length practice tests. There's all kinds of, like this year our counselor intern is doing sessions after school doing practice tests. There are those companies you can go pay lots of money to be able to raise your score up, and that's certainly something you can look at, but students need to be able to kind of work at some of those plans or those classes that they have. So there's a lot of that they can do on their own, just simple preparation for those tests. And ACT, same thing, spring of 11th grade. There are subject tests for the SAT that some of the more competitive schools will require as part of the admission process. So just something to be aware of, and you register through the College Board for the SAT. I already did the PSEO piece, and I just flashed right by the question and answer. So at this point, sorry for adding that little piece in, but I figured since you're here, we'll just give it to you. And we have 10 minutes left to be able to, or less if you need to leave, that is certainly fine. I really appreciate your attendance and helping your students be able to support them in registering for their 10th grade year. If there are questions that would be applicable to the whole group, you can certainly just raise your hand. I'll try to repeat the question. Otherwise, there are counselors kind of available here, and we can try to answer those for you individually. Yeah. The Academy Foundation courses are each 1 semester in length. Students started to ask, well, can I pick which semester I have a study hall? And typically no. The schedule is kind of built and PowerSchool is able to put everything in, but All the one-box courses are one-semester courses that could be offered either first or second semester. Yeah.
Pretty sure you said you might not have to choose to attend courses?
If you're planning to take 3, either honors, like honors English, AP, or IB courses, any 3, because there's a IB theater or IB film, you can opt out of taking the Academy Foundation courses. Otherwise, we're staffing for students to take 2 of the 4 Academy Foundation courses.
Then you wouldn't have to check 10 boxes.
Well, there's, considering you'd have 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, you'd have 10, 2 in the bottom to be able to make the 10 on the front. And if you didn't, right, if you're not taking it, then you'd only have 8 on the front. The main thing is, I think, just having a total of 12 to 14 boxes total for registration, because students can either take 12, 13, or 14 credits during their 9th or their 10th grade year, excuse me. Yeah. She's asking, do the language arts classes count for fine arts? Theater arts and advanced theater arts, and probably, I would guess as well, IB theater. Do we know if IB film would count? No, she's shaking her head no. So those, the theater arts, advanced theater arts, and IB theater would meet the fine arts requirement as out of that language arts elective area. Other questions? So your students have heard this now. You can go home and feel like you have heard it and kind of have that conversation. If you do have questions, feel free to call or email. That's a great way to be in touch with me. And again, I thank you for, I see a question over there. Is physics? Physics is offered. Traditionally, 10th graders wouldn't take it, so that would be something we'd kind of just put in that counselor only or work with the student if they were going to take that as a 10th grader. It's pretty rare, but it has, students have done that just depending on kind of the science pathway they decide to take. Yeah?
Sorry I was a little late, but where do I go to see the course descriptions?
You know what, and that's a good point. I'll show you on here. Online now on the website. So if you're on the St. Louis Park High School website, under Student Resources, you can scroll down to sorry, I just lost it there. Registration information. And that takes you here. There's another little thing here. I'm going to make this a little bigger here. Registration forms is also listed on the side, and we've put in downloads of all these different forms that I was kind of talking about, so you can find them there, like the 4-year planning worksheet or the credit requirement. But right here, if you click on 2014-15 Program of Studies, the course descriptions, our fellow colleagues, Andy Wilkes, went through and redid our Program of Studies guide this year, and so all the courses are in there. It starts with the academy classes and has descriptions and the grade levels those are open to, and then just goes alphabetically by department as you scroll through. And so you can find each of the different departments and any of the course offerings that are for the different grade levels. So thank you for reminding me. Anything else? Yes? If they opt out of the academy, can they take academy courses later? Yes, and those, typically the 10th grade ones would be on a space available basis, but if they don't take that foundation level course, the other courses in 11th and 12th grade should have been developed so they can just jump in and take one of those. So if they are interested in those at a later time in 11th or 12th grade and it fits in their schedule, they can do that. All right, thank you so much for your attendance tonight, and let me know if you have other questions.